Gravity's shadow. Commander Eliza Rice stood motionless before the massive holographic display that dominated the United Earth Defense Command Center. Her dark eyes reflected the pulsing red warning symbols that filled the screen, mapping the approach of what humanity now knew was an alien armada. 3 weeks had passed since deep space sensors had detected the formation, and with each new data point, the situation grew more dire. "Play it again," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight pressing down on her chest. Lieutenant Harper nodded, and the alien transmission filled the room once more. The translation matrix had done its job with cold efficiency, turning the alien language into precise English that left no room for diplomatic misinterpretation. "Your species represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Your continued existence cannot be permitted. You have 14 of your days to dismantle all defenses and prepare for assimilation. Resistance will result in complete elimination." Rice exhaled slowly. Status of the fleet. "Holding position at Jupiter's L5. Commander," Harper replied. "All 37 combat vessels are fully armed and awaiting orders, but against 3,000 alien ships." She didn't finish the sentence. The numerical disadvantage wasn't just staggering, it was apocalyptic. Even if each Earth vessel somehow destroyed 10 enemy ships, an optimistic scenario, it would barely make a dent in the approaching force. The display showed the alien vessel's formation with painful clarity, a perfect geometric pattern that shifted and adjusted with inhuman precision as it navigated the solar system. Something about their movement caught Raya's attention. She stepped closer to the hologram, focusing on the alien fleet's trajectory as it passed Saturn. "Highlight all course adjustments made near gas giant gravity wells," she ordered. The computer complied, and suddenly patterns emerged. The alien formation expanded and contracted as it navigated regions of complex gravitational interactions, maintaining wider spacing between vessels when passing near moons or planets. "They're avoiding overlapping gravity fields," Rice murmured. "Why would a technologically superior force go out of their way to avoid something as fundamental as gravity?" She turned to Dr. Varun Singh, the physicist who had been brought in to analyze the alien propulsion systems. "Doctor, those drive signatures you were trying to decipher, could they be related to artificial gravity manipulation?" Singh's eyes widened as he pulled up his data. "That actually makes sense, Commander. The energy readings suggest they're using some form of gravity control technology for propulsion, possibly creating localized bubbles of altered spacetime. And if they're manipulating gravity for propulsion," Rice started, "then strong or complex gravitational fields might interfere with their systems," Singh finished, excitement building in his voice. "It's like trying to create still water in the middle of a storm. The more turbulent the surrounding gravitational environment, the harder their systems have to work." For the first time in 3 weeks, Rice felt something other than dread. It wasn't quite hope, not yet, but it was the shadow of possibility. "Lieutenant Harper, get me everything we have on gravitational mechanics research from the past 50 years. Mining operations, asteroid redirection, the Luna Basin project, all of it. And find me the head of the Cirrus Gravity Mining Consortium." Commander, General Williams, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "What are you thinking?" Rice turned to face the room of tired, desperate faces. "General, I believe we may have found a vulnerability. These aliens have built their entire technology around controlling gravity rather than working with it. They see it as an obstacle to overcome. But humanity." She paused, the beginnings of a plan forming in her mind. "We've been surfing gravity wells since we first left Earth." Within hours, the command center had transformed into a hub of feverish activity. Dr. Akari Tanaka, the lead engineer of the Cirrus Gravity Mining Consortium, had arrived via emergency shuttle, bringing with her decades of experience in gravitational field manipulation. The technology had been developed for extracting minerals from asteroids without physically breaking them apart, using controlled gravity fields to separate valuable elements based on their mass. It was never designed as a weapon. Tanaka explained, gesturing at the schematics displayed on the screen. Our largest gravity manipulators can only affect a radius of about 5 kilometers, and the field strength is minimal by cosmic standards. But they work by creating localized gravitational anomalies, correct? Rides asked. Tanaka nodded. Yes, we essentially create small pockets of altered gravity. It's like stirring honey with different speeds in different directions. Elements with varying mass respond differently to the manipulation, allowing us to separate them. General Williams frowned. How does this help us against an armada? Even if we could somehow affect their ships with these devices, we don't have nearly enough of them. We don't need to affect all their ships directly, Rise replied, calling up a new simulation. We just need to disrupt the gravitational environment enough to interfere with their propulsion and weapon systems. The display showed the solar system, with Earth at its center and the approaching alien fleet highlighted in red. Rise pointed to various locations throughout the inner planet's orbits. If we position gravitational manipulators here, and here, and then use our mining vessels to tow specific mass-heavy asteroids into these positions, we can create a complex gravitational interference pattern. Dr. Singh, who had been running calculations, looked up with amazement. It would work like a resonance cascade. Each small distortion would compound the others, creating a gravity wave pattern that would be nearly impossible to navigate with gravity-dependent technology. We'd be creating a gravitational storm, Tanaka breathed, understanding dawning on her face. Exactly, Rai said. We don't fight their superior numbers and firepower directly. We change the battlefield itself into something they're not equipped to handle. General Williams studied the simulation, his expression shifting from skepticism to cautious hope. How quickly can we deploy this system? Tanaka exchanged glances with Singh. Repurposing the mining equipment alone would take at least a week under normal circumstances. Positioning everything correctly might take another week. We had 11 days until they reach Mars orbit, Williams said grimly. Then we work faster than normal circumstances permit, Rise replied. General, I need every mining vessel in the system. I need the gravity manipulation equipment from every outpost from Mercury to the belt. And I need every physicist and engineer who understands gravitational mechanics. Williams nodded slowly. You'll have them. But Commander Reyes, he added, his voice dropping, if this fails. Reyes met his gaze steadily. If this fails, we fight conventionally and die with dignity. But if it works, we might just save humanity by using the very force that shapes the universe against those who thought they had mastered it. As the command center erupted into coordinated activity, Reyes turned back to the holographic display, watching the perfect formation of the alien armada as it continued its relentless approach. They moved through space like digital constructs, each vessel maintaining precise positioning that ignored the natural ebb and flow of cosmic forces. They'd forgotten what it means to sail the gravity seas, she murmured to herself. It's time to remind them that nature cannot be perfectly controlled. It can only be harnessed by those wise enough to work with its chaos. Outside the command center, humanity began its desperate race against extinction. Mining ships broke orbit from asteroids throughout the belt, their holds filled not with precious minerals, but with the gravity manipulation equipment that might save their species. Research stations from Venus to Titan transmitted their experimental data on gravitational mechanics, and engineers worked around the clock to modify and enhance the existing technology. Operation Gravity had begun. Whether it would be humanity's salvation or just another footnote in their final chapter remained to be seen. But for the first time since the alien message had reached Earth, there was a flicker of defiance in the eyes of those tasked with mankind's defense. As Reyes coordinated the massive operation from Earth Defense Command, she allowed herself a grim smile. Humanity had 11 days to transform the fundamental force of the universe into a weapon. It wasn't much time, but then again, humanity had always excelled when pushed to the brink. Part 2. The Gravity Forge. Dawn broke over the Atacama Desert, painting the massive array of gravity generators in hues of gold and crimson. Dr. Kaito Nakamura hadn't slept in 36 hours, but adrenaline kept him upright as he monitored the energy readings from Earth's newest and most desperate defensive installation. Similar arrays had been hastily assembled at strategic locations across the planet. The Gobi Desert, the Australian outback, the Siberian plains, and the Sahara. Containment field stable at 83%, called out his assistant, Dr. Elena Volkov. The harmonic resonators are still showing fluctuations in the lower bandwidth. Nakamura nodded, his fingers dancing across the control panel. 6 days had passed since Commander Reyes had presented Operation Gravity well to Earth's Unified Defense Council. 6 days of frantic construction, equipment repurposing, and theoretical physics being put into desperate practice. Adjust phase alignment by 0.03 radians, he instructed. We need perfect synchronization between all 5 planetary arrays. His experimental gravity manipulation technology, originally designed for clean energy production, had suddenly become Earth's primary defensive weapon. The original prototype, barely larger than a laboratory bench, had now been scaled up to a facility spanning 10 square kilometers. The communications panel lit up, and Commander Reyes' face appeared on screen. Even through the display, Nakamura could see the exhaustion etched into her features. Status report, Doctor. The Earth-based arrays are operating at approximately 80% efficiency, Nakamura replied. We're still working on synchronizing the harmonic frequencies, but we should reach optimal parameters within 12 hours. Reyes nodded. What about the space-based components? The mining vessels have successfully repositioned 67% of the designated asteroids, Nakamura said, pulling up the latest deployment data. The gravity manipulators attached to them are functioning within acceptable parameters. The lunar installation is online and ready to serve as the focal amplifier. A shadow passed over Reyes' face. The alien fleet has accelerated. New projection shows them reaching Mars orbit in just over 72 hours. Nakamura felt his stomach tighten. 3 days. That's not enough time to complete the full deployment. It's all the time we have, Doctor. They've detected our activities and have altered their approach vector. Reyes leaned closer to the camera. How much of the system needs to be operational for the gravitational disruption to be effective? Nakamura exchanged glances with Volkov. Theoretically, if we have at least 75% of the network active and properly synchronized, we should generate sufficient gravitational interference to disrupt their propulsion systems. But, Commander, these are still theoretical calculations based on observed behavior. We haven't been able to directly test the effect on their specific technology. Theory is all we have right now, Doctor, Reyes said grimly. Focus on getting the most critical components online. The orbital defense fleet will move to support positions in 36 hours. They'll provide the necessary defense while the gravity network powers up. After the communication ended, Nakamura stared at the massive array stretching across the desert floor. What they were attempting had never been done before, creating artificial gravitational waves that would propagate through the solar system, disrupting the carefully balanced gravity control systems of the alien vessels. Do you think it will work? Volkov asked quietly, voicing the question that haunted everyone involved in the project. Nakamura considered the question carefully. In all of human history, our greatest achievements have come when we stopped fighting against natural forces and learned to work with them instead. These aliens, for all their technological superiority, seem to have taken the opposite approach. They've built their civilization around the idea that gravity is an obstacle to be nullified rather than a force to be harnessed. He gestured toward the array. What we're building isn't just a weapon. It's a reminder of how humanity has always survived, by understanding the fundamental rules of the universe and turning them to our advantage. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of calculation, adjustment, and constant recalibration. Sleep became a luxury measured in minutes rather than hours. Reports flowed in from installations around the world and throughout the solar system as humanity's improvised gravity network took shape. In orbit around Mars, Lieutenant Sophia Chen watched from the bridge of the EDS Intrepid as the alien fleet became visible to the naked eye. A constellation of metallic structures moving with unnatural precision against the backdrop of stars. As navigator of Earth's newest destroyer, she had been assigned the perilous task of deploying the final layer of gravity sensors that would provide real-time data on the effectiveness of their defensive strategy. Final sensor cluster deployed, she reported, maneuvering the ship away from the invisible network they had just completed. Readings are transmitting clearly back to command. Captain Mendoza nodded, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Good work, Lieutenant. Now let's get back to the defensive line before our visitors decide we're worth their attention. The Intrepid accelerated away from Mars, its engines pushing to maximum as it rejoined the human fleet positioned in the space between Mars and Earth. 37 warships, every combat-capable vessel humanity had managed to assemble, formed a fragile line of defense against the 3,000 alien vessels now visible on long-range sensors. They seemed almost laughably inadequate. All ships reporting ready, Commander, Lieutenant Harper announced in Earth Defense Command. The gravity network is at 79% operational capacity and synchronized across all installations. Commander Rice nodded, studying the massive holographic display that showed both the approaching alien armada and the invisible web of gravitational manipulation devices now spread throughout the inner solar system. It resembled a spider's web woven between the planets, delicate strands of human ingenuity spun against the void. Begin gravitational pulse sequence, she ordered. Low intensity at first. Let's see how they react before we commit to full disruption. Across the solar system, from the desert arrays on Earth to the mining platforms repositioned throughout the asteroid belt, the gravity manipulation devices activated in perfect synchronization. Each one created only a small distortion in the local gravitational field, barely noticeable in isolation. But together, amplified by the carefully positioned mass of selected asteroids and focused through the massive lunar installation, they began to generate waves of gravitational distortion that rippled outward toward the approaching alien fleet. The effect was nearly instantaneous and far more dramatic than anyone had predicted. The perfect formation of the alien armada, which had maintained geometric precision throughout their approach, suddenly wavered. Ships near the edge of the formation began to drift out of alignment, their positions shifting as their gravity control systems struggled to compensate for the unexpected fluctuations in the surrounding spacetime. It's working, Dr. Nakamura whispered, watching the sensor data flood in from the Martian network. Their propulsion systems are trying to compensate, but the gravitational fluctuations are compounding faster than they can adjust. In Earth Defense Command, the room fell silent as everyone watched the holographic display. The alien formation, once a perfect geometric pattern, was beginning to distort as ships throughout their fleet experienced varying levels of gravitational interference. They're transmitting, Harper announced suddenly. Wideband, directed at Earth. The alien message filled the command center, the translation matrix converting it in real time. Cease your primitive interference immediately. Your gravitational distortions violate galactic conventions of warfare. Final warning. Deactivate these devices or face immediate elimination. Reyes felt a surge of grim satisfaction. They had rattled the invaders, something they clearly hadn't expected from the primitive humans they had so casually threatened with extinction. Increase pulse amplitude by 20%, she ordered, and prepare the fleet for engagement. The moment their formation breaks completely, I want our ships moving through the disruption corridors we've mapped. As the gravity pulse intensified, the alien fleet's formation continued to deteriorate. Ships at the vanguard suddenly found themselves fighting against invisible currents of altered gravity, their once perfect formation dissolving into chaos as individual vessels struggled to maintain their position and heading. Then, without warning, the aliens opened fire. Energy weapons lanced out from dozens of ships, targeting both the human fleet and the detected locations of the gravity manipulation devices. But the same gravitational distortions that disrupted their formation also affected their weapons targeting. Beams of coherent energy bent and twisted as they passed through the waves of distorted spacetime, most missing their targets entirely. "They're launching smaller vessels," Harper reported, highlighting a section of the display where hundreds of fighter-sized craft were deploying from the larger alien ships. "Appears to be an attempt to target our gravity network directly." "Deploy our defensive squadrons," Reyes ordered, "and activate Phase 2 of the gravity pulse." Throughout the solar system, the gravity manipulation network shifted to its second configuration. Rather than generating uniform waves of distortion, it now created a complex pattern of gravitational corridors, paths of relatively stable spacetime surrounded by areas of intense disruption. "All Earth vessels, this is Commander Reyes. Execute Slingshot Protocol. I repeat, execute Slingshot Protocol." The human fleet, which had been holding position, suddenly broke formation. Rather than engaging the vastly superior alien force directly, Earth's warships accelerated into the prepared gravitational corridors, using the carefully mapped stable zones to maneuver, while the alien vessels continued to struggle against the disruptive effects. Aboard the EDS Intrepid, Lieutenant Chen felt the ship shudder as it entered one of these corridors, the gravitational forces pressing against its hull. "Maintaining course through Corridor 7, she reported, her hand steady on the navigation controls despite the turbulence. "Gravitational shear at acceptable levels." Captain Mendoza nodded. "Weapons locked on target cluster Alpha. Firing solution calculated with gravitational drift compensation." The Intrepid's railguns fired in synchronized bursts, launching hypervelocity projectiles that rode the gravitational waves like surfers catching massive swells. The alien vessels, still struggling to stabilize their position, could not evade effectively. Kinetic impacts tore through their hulls, the simple physics of mass and velocity proving devastatingly effective, where energy weapons might have been deflected. Throughout the battlefield, humanity's smaller, less advanced fleet executed the carefully planned slingshot protocol. Each vessel used the gravitational corridors as force multipliers, accelerating into attacking positions before withdrawing to safety, striking and disappearing before the aliens could effectively target them. It wasn't a fair fight. It was never meant to be. It was asymmetric warfare on a solar system scale, using the fundamental forces of nature to offset overwhelming technological superiority. But as the battle raged between Mars and Earth, sensors detected a new development. The central mass of the alien fleet was adjusting, their larger vessels generating powerful counterfields that began to stabilize the gravitational environment around them. "They're adapting," Dr. Nakamura reported, his voice tense. "Their flagship is creating some kind of gravitational dampening field. It's neutralizing our destruction effect in a 5,000-kilometer radius around their command vessels." Commander Reyes studied the tactical display, watching as a portion of the alien fleet regained cohesion around their largest ships. It was an impressive demonstration of their technological capabilities, and a worrying sign that humanity's advantage might be short-lived. "Reconfigure the lunar array," she ordered. "Focus all gravitational pulses on the boundary of their stabilization field. Let's see how their dampeners handle concentrated gravitational pressure." As the orders were relayed and the gravity network adjusted to this new threat, Reyes couldn't help but feel a flicker of respect for their adversaries. They were learning, adapting to humanity's unexpected defense. The question now was whether Operation Gravity Well had bought enough time for humanity's secondary defenses to be brought online. The battle had begun, but its outcome remained far from certain. "Singularity point." Captain Mendoza's voice crackled over the Intrepid's comms, strained but determined. "All hands, braced for gravitational shear. Corridor 9 is collapsing." Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across the navigation controls, compensating as the carefully mapped safe passage through the gravitational distortion field began to degrade. The deck vibrated beneath her feet as the ship's structural integrity field struggled against forces it was never designed to withstand. "The aliens have established a counter-resonance pattern," she reported, reading the incoming sensor data. They're systematically destabilizing our gravitational corridors one by one. Across the battlefield that had once been the orderly space between Mars and Earth, humanity's carefully constructed advantage was beginning to erode. 8 hours into the engagement, the alien fleet had recovered from their initial disarray and begun to adapt their technology to the chaotic gravitational environment. Their largest vessels had formed a core formation, generating powerful counterfields that created zones of gravitational stability around them. From these protected areas, they were methodically targeting the network of gravity manipulators that humanity had deployed. In Earth Defense Command, Commander Reyes watched the holographic display with growing concern. Red warning indicators flashed as each gravity manipulation device was destroyed or forced offline by precise alien energy weapons. Network integrity at 62% and falling, Dr. Nakamura reported, his voice tight with exhaustion. The lunar array is still operational, but we've lost 17 asteroid-mounted manipulators in the last hour. Reyes nodded grimly. They're learning faster than we anticipated. Their gravity control technology is more adaptable than our model suggested. Yet, despite the aliens' recovery, the battle was far from the one-sided slaughter it would have been without Operation Gravity Well. Earth's vessels continued to use the remaining gravitational corridors to execute hit-and-run attacks, inflicting damage on the alien fleet through conventional weapons enhanced by gravitational acceleration. Commander, Lieutenant Harper called out, highlighting a section of the tactical display. The alien flagship is moving into a higher orbit around Mars. They appear to be establishing a new formation. Ray studied the movement pattern, recognition dawning in her eyes. They're positioning themselves for a concentrated assault. They're going to try to punch through our remaining gravitational defenses and make a direct run at Earth. The realization sent a chill through the command center. If the aliens managed to break through the gravity network entirely, Earth's conventional defenses would be overwhelmed within hours. Dr. Nakamura, Ray said, turning to the physicist who had been monitoring the gravity network's performance. Is the Singularity Protocol ready? Nakamura hesitated, exchanging glances with Dr. Volkov. The simulations were promising, Commander, but we haven't had time to thoroughly test the gravitational focusing effect. At full power, the lunar array could create a localized gravity, well with up to 50 times normal Earth gravity, but maintaining stability will be. We're out of options, Doctor, Rise interrupted. The aliens have adapted to our gravitational disruption faster than expected. If we don't escalate now, we lose everything. After a moment, Nakamura nodded. The lunar array can be reconfigured for Singularity Protocol in approximately 20 minutes. But Commander, once initiated, we won't be able to fine-tune the effect. It will be all or nothing. Understood. Begin reconfiguration immediately. Rice turned to the communications officer. Order all Earth vessels to pull back to defensive positions near Earth orbit. They need to be clear of the effect radius when we initiate the protocol. As the orders were relayed throughout the human fleet, the alien armada continued their methodical destruction of humanity's gravity manipulation network. Their flagship, a massive vessel nearly the size of Earth's moon, had established a stable zone at the center of their formation from which smaller craft emerged to target specific components of the human defenses. Aboard the EDS Intrepid, Lieutenant Chen guided the ship through increasingly unstable gravitational corridors, evading alien pursuers while withdrawing toward Earth as ordered. Gravitational anomaly detected on intercept course, she reported, highlighting the sensor reading for Captain Mendoza. It's one of their hunter-killers, using some kind of gravitational propulsion to track us through the corridor distortions. Mendoza studied the tactical display grimly. They figured out how to use our own gravitational network against us. Clever. He turned to the weapons officer. Target their propulsion signature with a spread of kinetic penetrators. Time the release to coincide with the next gravitational wave. The Intrepid shuddered as it released a barrage of hypervelocity projectiles, their trajectory calculated to ride the gravitational distortions rather than fight against them. The alien vessel, despite its advanced technology, could not evade the attack, its own gravitational drive creating a distinctive signature that made it trackable through the chaos. Similar engagements played out across the battlefield as humanity's fleet executed a fighting withdrawal, buying time for the Singularity Protocol to be prepared. Each small victory was hard-won, paid for with damaged ships and exhausted crews pushing their vessels beyond designed limits. In the Atacama Array, Dr. Volkov coordinated with the lunar installation, synchronizing the Earth-based gravity generators to support the massive gravitational focusing effect they were about to attempt. Lunar Array reconfiguration complete, she reported to both Nakamura and Commander Reyes. All Earth-based installations are synchronized and ready to channel additional power to the lunar facility. The alien flagship has cleared Mars orbit, Harper announced in the command center. Their main formation is accelerating toward Earth. Time to intercept at current speed, 47 minutes. Ray studied the tactical display, watching as the alien armada formed a spearhead formation with their flagship at its center. Despite the losses they had suffered, nearly 500 vessels destroyed or disabled by human attacks and gravitational interference, they still represented an overwhelming force. "Status of Singularity Protocol?" she asked. "Ready to initiate on your command," Nakamura replied. "Optimal targeting solution calculated for the center of their formation. The gravitational lens should focus directly on their flagship." Rise nodded. "All ships confirmed clear of the effect radius." "Confirmed, Commander. The last vessel, EDS Santiago, has just reported reaching minimum safe distance." Taking a deep breath, Rise gave the order that would determine humanity's fate. Initiate Singularity Protocol. Across Earth and throughout near-Earth space, the remaining gravity manipulation network shifted to its final configuration. The individual generators no longer created disruptive waves, but instead channeled their energy toward the massive lunar array. The installation, built into the floor of the Copernicus crater, began to glow with power as it focused the combined gravitational manipulation capability of humanity into a single devastating effect. In the space between Earth and Mars, directly in the path of the advancing alien armada, a point of distorted spacetime began to form. It started small, barely visible even on sensitive gravitational sensors, but it grew rapidly as the lunar array channeled more power into the effect. Aboard the alien flagship, sensors detected the forming gravitational anomaly, but by the time they recognized the threat, it was too late to alter their course. The massive gravitational lens had taken shape directly in their path, creating what was effectively an artificial gravity well of unprecedented power. The effect on the alien formation was catastrophic. Their carefully calculated approach vector suddenly intersected with a region of space where gravity had been artificially intensified to 50 times normal Earth gravity. Ships at the leading edge of their formation were the first to encounter it, their gravity control systems overloading as they tried to compensate for forces they were never designed to withstand. "The gravitational lens is stable," Nakamura reported, his voice filled with awe as he monitored the readings. "The alien vessels are being pulled into the effect radius faster than they can adjust course." On the tactical display, the alien armada's perfect spearhead formation shattered as ships were drawn toward the artificial gravity well. Their flagship, caught at the edge of the effect, deployed massive counterfields in an attempt to break free, but the concentrated gravitational force was too powerful. "Their drive signatures are destabilizing," Harper announced. "We're detecting multiple catastrophic failures across their fleet." Commander Rise watched as alien vessels, unable to escape the gravitational trap, began to collide with one another. Others, attempting to power through the distortion, pushed their gravity control systems beyond safe limits, resulting in cascade failures that tore their hulls apart from within. It was not a clean victory. The Singularity Protocol was not a precision weapon, but a desperate measure that transformed the fundamental forces of nature into a weapon of mass destruction. Hundreds of alien vessels were crushed or torn apart in the artificial gravity well, while others found themselves trapped in degrading orbits around the distortion, unable to generate enough power to escape. The alien flagship is attempting to create a counter-singularity, Nakamura warned, highlighting alarming energy readings from the massive vessel. They're channeling power from their entire remaining fleet into their central gravitational control systems. For a moment, it seemed the tide might turn again as the alien flagship began to generate a matching gravitational distortion, creating a region of null gravity between itself and the human-made gravity well. But the lunar array, supported by every remaining gravity generator in the system, continued to pour energy into the Singularity Protocol. They can't maintain the counterfield, Volkov reported, watching the readings fluctuate. Their technology is designed for gravity neutralization, not generation. They're trying to cancel out our effect rather than working with it. It was the fundamental difference in philosophy that Reyes had identified weeks earlier. The aliens approached gravity as an obstacle to be eliminated, while humanity had learned to harness and work with this fundamental force. Now that difference would determine which species survived. The alien counter-singularity collapsed first, its carefully balanced null field overwhelmed by the raw power of humanity's artificial gravity well. Without its protection, the flagship was drawn inexorably toward the center of the distortion, its massive hull straining against forces it could no longer control. Throughout the command center, displays showed the alien fleet in disarray, cut off from their flagship's coordination and trapped in the chaotic gravitational environment. Individual vessels either attempted to flee or fought desperately against human ships that had begun to advance once more, exploiting the confusion. The flagship's drive core is reaching critical instability, Harper reported. Gravitational sensors show structural failure imminent. Reyes watched as the massive alien vessel, pride of their invasion fleet, succumbed to the very force they had spent generations trying to overcome. Its hull, designed to withstand conventional weapons and the vacuum of space, was never meant to endure the crushing pressure of a concentrated gravitational field. The explosion, when it came, was visible across half the solar system, a burst of energy as the flagship's power core detonated, momentarily outshining Mars in the sky of Earth. The shockwave rippled through the artificial gravity well, disrupting its stability and sending pulses of gravitational distortion throughout the battlefield. Lunar array power levels dropping, Nakamura announced. The singularity effect is beginning to degrade. But it had served its purpose. The alien invasion force, once a perfect armada of 3,000 vessels, had been reduced to scattered groups of survivors, their command structure destroyed, and their technological advantage neutralized by humanity's understanding of the very force they had sought to conquer. All Earth vessels, this is Commander Reyes, she broadcasted across all frequencies. The enemy flagship has been destroyed. Move in and engage remaining hostile forces. Gravitational distortions are diminishing, so conventional tactics apply. As Earth's fleet advanced to engage the remnants of the alien armada, Rice turned to the communications officer. Prepare a message for transmission on all frequencies the aliens have used. When the channel was ready, she spoke with the calm authority that had guided humanity through its darkest hour. To all remaining vessels of the invasion fleet, your command ship has been destroyed. Your formation is broken. You sought to conquer us by mastering the fundamental forces of nature, but you failed to understand them. Humanity does not fight against gravity. We have learned to dance with it, to make it our partner rather than our enemy. This is our solar system, shaped by these forces long before either of our species evolved. You may retreat and carry this lesson back to your civilization, or you may continue fighting and be destroyed. The choice is yours, but know this. Earth stands ready to defend itself using the very laws of physics you thought you had mastered. Hours later, as the remaining alien vessels withdrew from Earth space, Commander Reyes stood alone in the observation dome atop Earth Defense Command. The stars shone brightly above, unchanged despite the battle that had raged among them. Somewhere out there, the survivors of the alien armada were returning to whatever civilization had sent them, carrying with them knowledge of a species that had turned its technological disadvantage into victory. Dr. Nakamura joined her, his exhausted face reflecting the same mixture of relief and uncertainty she felt. They'll be back, he said quietly. Now that they know their weakness, they'll develop countermeasures. Reyes nodded. Undoubtedly. But we'll be ready. The gravity manipulation technology you helped develop saved us today.